Hey guys, I'm Marissa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing my birth story for our baby boy number 3 who I have here. He is now 2 weeks old, and I thought I would sit down and share my birth story because I love hearing other people's birth stories, and I've shared my birth story for my other 2 boys, and I wanted to sit down and film this video while it was still fresh in my mind. But this is baby Beau. Like I said, he's our 3rd boy. My other boys are Peter, who is 4, and Jack, who is 2. So all my boys are right at like 2 years apart. He's been a sweet new addition, and the last 2 weeks have honestly gone really well. And he's been my best little newborn sleeper so far. I'm hoping that that continues. And we've just been really grateful as we've been settling into life as a family of 5. And if you're new here, I like to share about family finance and ways that you can budget, save, and make more money for your family. I know that this video isn't super budgeting related, but I love to share about motherhood as well. So let's just get right into it. When I was 38 weeks pregnant with baby Beau, I went to my OB checkup, which I hit like 38 weeks on a Monday, and my appointment wasn't until like Friday. And I went to that appointment and I was 4 centimeters dilated. And I figured that I'd be going into labor already at this point. My second son was born at 38 weeks and 3 days. And so I just, like, in my mind, I was like, oh, of course I'm gonna go early because like my last baby was early, and now I'm a 3rd-time mom, so of course it's gonna be early. But I was past that point, and I went in for my 38-week appointment. I was very ready to have this baby. I was 4 centimeters, and the doctor gave me a membrane sweep, and I left that appointment feeling like crampy, but nothing ever started into full labor. So I, every day since then, would like wake up in the morning just bummed that I didn't end up going into labor in the night. So I had my 39-week appointment the next week on Wednesday, which wasn't even a week after my last appointment, and this was August 7th. I was due August 12th with this baby. So I went in on August 7th, had my 39-week appointment, saw the doctor, and she checked me, and I was at nearly 5 centimeters. And I figured that I would be close to that because considering I was 4 centimeters the week before, and I've been having lots of like cramping and like mild contractions, but nothing ever like into full-blown labor. So she checked me, I was at a 5, and she was like, I actually, like, there's really nothing I can like strip for your membranes because everything is like, because you're so far dilated, like anything after 4 centimeters like doesn't really do anything. And I didn't know that. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But she, I don't know, tried to do what she could with that. And I jokingly was like, can you just send me to the hospital right now to have this baby? Ha ha ha. And she was like, unfortunately, there's no like real reason that I could send you to the hospital. But would you like to be placed on a like next in line induction list? And I was like, yes. So with my other 2 babies, I went into spontaneous labor. I'd never had to have an induction, but honestly, I just wanted to have an induction with this baby from like a while ago. Earlier on in my pregnancy, I asked if I could do like a 39-week induction, and they were like, the hospital's so busy that no, they don't like really do elective inductions because they're just so busy that that's like not a priority. And so I wasn't able to schedule one, or else I honestly just would have. But therefore, when that option was presented to me at that appointment, I was like, yes, I would love to be on the list for induction, especially because I have 2 other boys at home and trying to plan around childcare, going to the hospital. We weren't like super close to the hospital. All of that just kind of made me nervous, especially knowing that I was already 5 centimeters and like, how quickly is this going to progress? I want to get my epidural, all of those kinds of things. So I was like, yes, I would love to be placed on the list. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, is that going to be like in a couple days or what? And the doctor said that they could call me tonight or they could call in a couple days, depending on when the hospital isn't busy. And I was like, okay, sounds good. But also when I left that OB appointment, the doctor was like, if you have any sort of pattern at all to contractions, just go to the hospital. Like, don't even worry about it, just go. So that appointment was at 2 o'clock, and I leave that appointment around like 3, and I come home and I'm feeling a little crampy. And then by 4:30, I was definitely feeling very consistently crampy. And soon after that, I had like a couple contractions where I had to stop and was like trying to breathe through it. And my husband was like, okay, we're gonna go to the hospital. We called up my parents. They came over to watch the boys. They live close by, which is super nice. And we left for the hospital. We ended up leaving for the hospital at 5:15, and I was then having contractions every like 4 to 5 minutes apart. Nothing that was like, I'm about to have this baby painful, but definitely progressing to more painful contractions. So at 5:45, we get to the hospital. We also have moved here to Phoenix from Portland, Oregon. And so this is a new hospital for me. I haven't given birth here before. And so I didn't know how all of this was going to go, but we showed up to the hospital, and this was just very different from my experience in Oregon, because when I walked into labor and delivery at the hospital in Oregon, I like walked in and they immediately took me back to a room, and that's where they did triage, and that's where I gave birth. That was my postpartum room. Like, we were in the same room the entire time, and we went straight back there. Here, we like showed up and they had me go into a waiting room where I then like went through registration. Like, I talked to someone at a desk and like gave my insurance, like did all this registration stuff while I'm having contractions. And they were like, okay, like sit here and wait, and someone will come get you. So we ended up waiting in this waiting room for an hour. The hospital was busy with women in labor. So we were there for an hour, and my contractions were still about 4 to 5 minutes apart, and nothing like super bad, but I was beginning to like feel so concerned of like, I was already 5 centimeters, how far could I possibly be now? Like, I just want to get back there and get checked. And I was definitely starting to feel a little bit anxious, considering that I was laboring in a waiting room with a bunch of other random people. So finally they called me back to triage, and the nurse goes to check me, and she says that I'm still 5 centimeters after all of that. So she calls my doctor, and my doctor said that I need to make progress in the next 1 to 2 hours in order to be admitted, because I was still like basically 5 centimeters earlier on in the day. But then I even asked the nurse, I was like, are you really going to send me home being 5 centimeters and having consistent contractions? She was like, no, but let's see what progress you can make. And I was like, okay. So they took me off the monitors, and I just started walking around my room, just pacing the room. And contractions were then every like 2 minutes apart while I was being more active, and I was doing like squats and all of that. And I could feel like a lot more pressure. And so I called the nurse in again after like another hour, and she checked me, and I was at 6 centimeters. And she said that my water was like bulging, like she was shocked that it hadn't broken yet. And she was like, okay, yeah, you're getting admitted. So again, the hospital was so busy. Apparently right now is baby season of like August and September, I guess, are busy baby season times. So there wasn't even a labor room available for me yet. So I hung out in triage for a little bit longer, and then a room opened up in labor. So we walked down the hall to the labor room. So this was now like 8:45 p.m. when I finally got into labor and delivery. And I had told them earlier that I wanted to get an epidural, and I know that some women will want to like wait a little bit longer, because then you can be like more active in the in your room. But since it was the evening, I just wanted to be able to rest. And since I knew I was planning to get an epidural anyway, I was like, let's just do it. So I got my epidural. My nursing staff was so nice. The anesthesiologist was great. Came in, gave me the epidural, and as soon as he did, then we started more like induction type things, which again, I know that some people would not be for that. I'm all for it. I'm like, let's get the ball rolling. And I feel like they were wanting to do that too, because of how busy the hospital was. Like, I'm sure that they wanted to get things going so that they could help the next person. So I got my epidural, and then they immediately started Pitocin and broke my water. So it is now like 10 o'clock, and I've had all of these things done. They all got done within like 30 minutes of each other, with the epidural, the Pitocin, breaking my water, and then putting me on the peanut ball, which as a third time mom, I feel like I, knew more of what to expect, what's helped me in previous labors. And I knew that like the peanut ball really helped me with my other ones. Also with my previous labors, I stalled out. I went into spontaneous labor, but I stalled out at 8 and 9 centimeters with my other boys and needed Pitocin to get there at the very end. And so I didn't even want to like deal with that. I was like, yes, let's start Pitocin. Let's break the water. Let's get this going. I'm totally fine with that. So by 10 o'clock, I was set up with all of that, and they were like, okay, you can take some time to rest or whatever. So we tried to close our eyes for a little bit, and then the nurse came in to check me at 11:45, and I was like, yeah, I'm feeling a lot more pressure. And she checked me and she was like, yep, there's the baby's head. So she called the doctor. The doctor ends up coming in right around midnight, and she gowned up, and I literally had one contraction pushed, and he was born at 12:07. So my baby boy, Beau, was born on August 8th. And right after midnight, and it was such a peaceful birth, like with it being like at night, we were trying to rest, and so we like had the lights off, and they didn't really like turn very many lights on when it was actually time for him to be delivered. And it was also during the Olympics. We like had the Olympics going on the TV, and it was just the doctor, my nurse, and then a baby nurse, and it was just like super chill in there, and such a quick delivery. And the other huge praise that I have with that is that I didn't really have any tearing at all. With my first two, I had some second degree tearing, and that recovery therefore ends up being like a little bit harder to walk, more of a recovery, all of that kind of good stuff. But with this time around, right after he was born, placed him on my chest, and that's all I could think of was just sitting there looking at my baby and just like amazed that all of this happened. And then my doctor was like, oh, looks like you don't have any tearing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think of that. Like, that's wonderful. And then she said that there's maybe like a tiny little paper cut sized tear, and she put on one stitch of it, and that was it. And that was just a huge blessing. So we got to hang out in labor and delivery for a little bit longer. We had our golden hour of skin to skin time, and then they came in and weighed him, and he ended up being 8 pounds 2 ounces, which is a whole pound bigger than my other two boys. And I was shocked that he was that big, and also shocked that I didn't have any tearing with him, but I did with my other two. I guess third time mom things. But we got to hang out in labor and delivery for a little bit, and then was sent to a different room for postpartum. And then we got settled in there. I think the hardest part with everything was the timing in which I gave birth. Ideally, it would have been great if I would have like woken up early in the morning and gone into labor after a full night's rest, but going into labor right before bed was harder because then we didn't really sleep that first night, and then you have newborns, so you don't sleep anyway. So I think that was a little bit more difficult, but we knew that that was just what it was going to be. The other thing was that since he was born at night, he had to have 24 hours until he did newborn screening until we could be discharged. So we ended up having to stay like an extra night. With my second son, Jack, he was born at noon, and I got to the hospital earlier that day at like 6 a.m. And so we were able to be discharged by like noon the next day. We only had to spend one night in the hospital, and it was amazing. So I was a little bummed that this time we had to like spend an extra night just because you don't sleep well, and everyone comes to wake you up every couple hours anyway. So we were excited to get out of the hospital when it was time, but everything went really smoothly with his time there. He was able to latch and nurse right away, which I was so grateful for. And we just had some great snuggly moments in the hospital. Also, my other boys were born in Oregon in 2020 and 2022. And so both of them were like full-blown pandemic babies. And so I didn't really get to have visitors with either. With my first one in 2020, I didn't have any visitors at all. With my second in 2022, I could have 2 support people in my room. So that was my husband and my mom. And that was it. But this time around, like, we actually got to have visitors, and so the boys got to come to the hospital with my parents and hold baby Beau, and that was just such a sweet moment to like have a real normal birth experience with this being my third. And it was just really sweet to see my big boys snuggling up and loving on baby here. So that is my birth story. I'm grateful that Beau and I are both doing well. My recovery has been so much easier this time around just because of not having any tearing. I've felt like I've had more energy this postpartum than I have with the other two experiences, and it's just been a really sweet time as we're settling into life now as a family of 5, and we just get lots of baby snuggles all day, which I can't pass up. And the older boys are so obsessed with little brother, and it's just been a really sweet transition. I know people are like, what's easier, going from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3? This has by far been the easiest transition. 0 to 1 shook my world, and 2 to 3 has seemed super easy because we've already been experiencing multiple kids, and so we know more of what we're doing. Also, he's been my chillest baby so far, and I'm hoping that that continues. So that's our story. Thanks for hanging out for this little birth story. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you are new, and I would love to see you in the next one. Bye.